The whole meeting for October 8th. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. A long-time Town of Poughkeepsie employee, retired detective, passed away unexpectedly a week or so ago. His name was Jim McDowell, so please just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call.
John Basley, First Ward.
Bill Carlos, Second Ward.
Joe Conti, Third Ward.
Michael Safone, Fourth Ward.
Ann Church in Sixth Ward.
Todd Tancredi, Supervisor.
Felicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Jim Nelson, Attorney for the town.
All right, we've got three items on our agenda tonight. First one being a discussion and an update from the folks at Hudson Heritage. They're here to update us on their progress and let us know where they're headed and what they're looking for from the town. But I'm going to let Neil Wilson, our Director of Development, get the ball rolling and tee it up.
Sure. Good. Thank you very much. We have been working with the new owners of the former Psych Center property for basically this year. One of the topics of conversation has to do with the disposition of the many of the non-historic buildings that are on the site. We have not seen, we've seen conceptual plans. This board has seen conceptual plans for the redevelopment of the site. But all of those plans involve in some way, shape, or form taking down many of the buildings that are located sort of off the top of the hill, if you will. We're talking about properties, buildings that are not on any state or national register. The question really is about the timing of the issuance of demo permits and how and the manner in which the demolition of those buildings would go forward. And the critical piece here is the applicants or the owners are a matter of weeks, maybe a month or two away from making an application to this board for the master plan approval that's required under the Hudson Heritage District regulations. And once they start that process, seeker says that they can't touch anything on site. They can't take down trees. They can't take down buildings. Basically, it's status quo until they're through the environmental review process and they have received their approvals. We could be looking at anywhere from an 18 to a 24-month process to get everything done from the time that they submit their application to the town board. And we have some coordination that we're going back and forth once again with the planning board, which has a recommendation to issue. So there's time spent on some of the procedure, and then there's a lot of time spent on considering the plans, considering the environmental issues that go along with their plans, traffic, water, sewer, all the normal things that we deal with. In the meantime, under the kind of static seeker rules, everything remains as it is on the site while we're working through this master plan process. The owners have been talking with staff about, is there a process that would allow them to commence taking down the buildings that I refer to as sort of as the bottom of the hill. Basically, it's the south end of the site, closest to the Home Depot plaza to the south. And they're here tonight, and they could talk a little bit more about which of those buildings that we've been talking about. But the question is, what's the appropriate mechanism to get this done? And in considering sort of pragmatic, if you will, and sort of the interplay of seeker with our review process and this mandate that nothing occur on the site, there's a process that I believe that we can craft and reasonably so and legally so that would allow for the commencement of the overall project review, consideration, sort of a separate item, if you will, that would be run in tandem with the review of the master plan that would allow us to consider the environmental effects of allowing for the demolition of these buildings to proceed while we're actually in the midst of undertaking the review of the master plan. So effectively, and this is a very sort of simple idea, they would submit their application with a request for a demolition permit. We would circulate all of the application documents to all of the involved and interested agencies, and particularly to the State Historic Preservation Office. As you know, the administrative building, the Great Lawn in front, that's on the State and National Register. The buildings that we're talking about are described as contributing buildings. Individually and collectively, they are not on the register, but a contributing building is a description of a building that, by its use, in this case, was part of a campus that had a historic and long-term use as a psychiatric center, and that includes properties and the Great Lawn that are actually on a historic registry. But what we would then do would be to solicit input from the State Historic Preservation Office, consider the environmental effects separately of issuing the demolition permits. And if everybody agrees and it makes sense to do so and it could pass environmental muster, issue a negative declaration to allow for the demolition permits to be issued and allow the owners to go and start taking those buildings down while we continue on with the master plan process. It's a little unusual. It's a segmented review. Segmentation under seeker is described as basically taking several pieces of a larger project and considering the environmental impact separately and arriving at a conclusion that you don't need an environmental impact statement. Well, that's not going to happen. This project is too large. It needs an EIS. And we're really talking about allowing for a segmented review and the issuance of permits to take down the buildings that ultimately need to be taken down anyway. They're loaded with asbestos. For the most part, they're all going to have to be specially handled. I don't believe that, and I haven't seen any of the reports, but my belief is that the buildings themselves and the materials that are in them, including asbestos, will require all of those buildings, or most of them, I should say, to be handled specially. In other words, in the normal course, before we could issue a building permit on a building that has asbestos in there, the owner would have to go in and do the abatement, show us a report that they've done the abatement, and then we would issue the demo permit to allow them to drop the building. In this case, I don't believe that form of abatement is going to be possible for most of those buildings. They're going to have to handle the entirety of the buildings themselves, as if they were all.
Well, there's been fire damage in a couple of those buildings.
Yeah, some of those, frankly, they need to come down anyway. Though that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, we could issue permits, demo permits very quickly. But again, they all still contain asbestos, and they all require that special handling. But we're talking about a large number of buildings, and so a fair amount of work that, because of the movement of vehicles and equipment across the site, we'll also have to have a separate erosion control plan. Because we're talking maybe a year or two of actual building demolition, because there's a lot that has to be taken down, with the special handling and all of that. But again, kind of getting back to this concept of allowing for the demolition to proceed, I think that this is viable. We can certainly craft the process. It would pass muster under seeker, and would still allow us to meet all of our obligations under seeker for the review of the impact of issuing the demo permits and allowing that to go first while we continue on with the primary environmental review of the overall master plan. So I'm here describing it to you. I don't have any materials, but this is just a concept that I've been working on for the last several weeks. So.
And, from the town's point of view, I mean, the buildings, I believe the buildings in question are buildings that, as Neil stated, are full of asbestos. They're more of a hazard than anything else. Our police department has had to work for years in security for the current owners as well as the previous owners. Security year-round on site, trying to keep people out of the various buildings. There's graffiti on them. So worst case scenario, they get some of the buildings down and don't take all of them. Best case scenario is the buildings in question, which are the ones along Route 9 and by Home Depot, they're all down and we're left with an open field instead of an area that has these buildings on them that are just a hazard to the community, to the site itself, and, it makes a lot of sense to me. But
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of people into the buildings, pulling scrap metal out. They're all trespassing. It's all illegal. So the other advantage, as supervisor said, is not only do we, ultimately end up with a clean site, no matter what may happen with the overall project, but we're putting people on the ground and putting them in a position so that to discourage illegal entry. The buildings in the area will have to be separately fenced. There's certain provisions that have to be made to keep people away. But simply taking the buildings down eliminates the attractive nuisance that causes them to want to go there in the first place.
Is one of those buildings the Cheney building, the big building?
Yes.
Okay. If I'm understanding, this is more from my understanding is, what we're looking for is a way to allow the demolitions to go ahead while the entire process of application, getting a permit, doing all that is going on.
Yes.
Okay. Do they have to be separate? Or can they be together like this?
The idea is that we receive an application that includes a request for consideration of issuance of demolition permits, but we start the process together and we review the process of not only reviewing the impacts of a project, but the impact of issuing the demolition permits before we issue any determinations on the overall project. So you're starting them together, and then you're allowing the demo portion of it to sort of effectively drop out from the remainder of the review. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
No, it answers the question. So by the way, this is common sense. This makes good sense to do. But when to do that, to give them the permit, did you call it a
demolition permit?
Demolition permits. To give them the demolition permit, does a full form environmental impact thing have to be done? Not a short form, because there's clearly going to be impact.
Right.
So a full form gets done separate just for the demolition? And then another one for the rest, what they're going to do?
Yeah, we could do it that way, or we could receive one long form, environmental assessment form, that would cover both. It's probably six of one, half a dozen of the other.
What's the simpler, cleaner way to do it?
Honestly, I think with a single form to at least get the process started. At the end of the day, the major project is going to be subject to an environmental impact statement. In other words, we're going to move beyond the environmental assessment form and into...
But they can't start taking the buildings down until that environmental impact statement is done.
That's the point of allowing for a separated, a segmented environmental review of the impact of allowing those buildings to come down first.
Okay,
So, yeah.
maybe I didn't ask the question right. Are they going to have a full environmental impact statement on the demolition part?
No. We're going to allow the idea is to allow for the demolition portion of it to drop out before we really start the nuts and bolts of the EIS. Right.
Particular area.
So we're going to give them a permit to start the demolition before we have a full environmental review? That's not making any sense to me.
We're reviewing all of it. We're reviewing the demo permit plus the big project. But what we start through the environmental assessment form, the long form, and that they have to give that to us as part of their application under the rules. But we separately consider and run a dual track looking at the environmental impact of just the demolition permit while we're preparing the scoping document and the environmental impact statement on the big project.
Okay.
So it's kind of a dual track, and that's where the segmentation comes in. In other words, we're allowing for the segmentation and a separate review of the demo permit.
But my question is, but the review will be accomplished before they have to start taking those buildings down?
On the demo.
That has
on the
to be.
demo.
Demo review?
Has to be, has to be.
Has to be.
Has to be.
All
yes.
right, so then,
Yeah, we still
whether
need,
it's segmented or
an
not, as long
environmental-
as that part is reviewed,
Right.
then it's in their best interest to do what we can to try and facilitate that.
Right.
As long as the review is done.
Yeah, we still have to do an
And
environmental review of all parts of it.
And that
including
includes
demolition.
the runoff and all the rest of the stuff?
Yeah, any of the impacts to do with the demolition of the building, yes, those all have to be
I
examined.
mean, I would think the review on the overall project's gonna be much more detailed, much more significant than a review of this demo. Demo, like
Right.
Bill said, you're gonna consider runoff and, any disturbance to the land and how the land is left after the buildings are gone. I mean, the rest of the project, massive, you're gonna be considering
Yeah,
traffic.
Make-
Off-site improvements,
It's
the
in the
works.
best interest of everybody, neighbors, businesses, everybody up there to have the buildings down.
I believe
So
so.
if we can facilitate that, but still protect, I'm not saying delay or put barriers in their way, facilitate it to go forward, but still make sure we protect to the right way, the way it's supposed to be done. No shortcut in it.
We have to.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
that's worth our support. My opinion is.
Well, this is a discussion tonight. The guys from Hudson Heritage are here to give us an update as to, they've been doing a lot of work, over the last, probably a couple of years, but certainly the last few months. And I thought it'd be good to get an update as to where they've been and what they've done and kind of where they're in the project. So Nick and George, if you want to come up and fill the board in on the progress you've made and what you're looking at.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Nick Manoia. Happy to be back. The last time we were here, George and I were here, we gave a broad overview on kind of conceptually what the master planning is for the property. Again, I'm one of the principals of the company that owns the property in conjunction with our joint venture partner, EFG Environment Finance Group out of Denver, Colorado, which is the environmental cleanup aspect of who we are as a joint venture. As Neil said, some of the things I'd like to kind of dovetail into Neil's presentation. I thought he did a great job of trying to get a thumbnail on, what this has been about for the last several months. I'd like to backfill where we've been since we were here last. We've spent the last many months having environmental companies go through each and every building on this property. I think there's 59, George, is it? 59 buildings that have been completely gone through by environmental firms to do a site-wide and specific building assessment, individual building assessment on the lead paint and asbestos in each and every building. There's a full report now, written report on each and every building, which was a monumental task, to say the least, especially considering the condition of a lot of these buildings, some of which were frankly, to the point where we couldn't allow people in them because it was unsafe conditions. So they were only able to assess it from afar because of the possibility of these structures collapsing. Having said that, there are reports on each and every individual building. The magnitude of the asbestos and lead paint, as you can imagine, is extreme. The conservative estimates are that it's about a $5 million problem. Just on the asbestos alone. The demolition, just order of magnitude, so you have a sense of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to jump around a little bit because the goal here for us, and again, working within the confines of what we believe is an ability to do a segmented demolition process outside of, in conjunction with and outside of the regular seeker process, is to accelerate the program, because if it takes us 2 years to get an approval through seeker, it's roughly been estimated that the demolition, the asbestos abatement, is at least another 2 years. So if we can't start that until the end of the seeker process, you're looking at 4 years before we can even begin to have a pad-ready, shovel-ready development, which could potentially mean we're in a whole different market. I mean, frankly, we could be in another recession by then, given how real estate cycles work. considering that we're already in a positive spin for the last year or 18 months or 2 years, depending on your economic view of the world, that 4 years from now we're liable to be at the tail end of the positive end of the curve and headed toward another recession. And the last thing any of us want to do is have to roll back and do nothing at the end of the period of time, because there's no market for what we're planning. So the goal for us is to try to do a simultaneous demolition to essentially save the 2 years that it would take to demolish it if we work this process sequentially. So we're trying to do it simultaneously. The extent, there's a complete scoping document that's been developed by our firm in conjunction with our joint venture partner, which is going out to bid actually tomorrow to several national firms which do demolition of this magnitude. And of the buildings that are on the property, essentially 56 of them have been slated for demolition based on what we think are either structurally unsound, in the wrong place, functionally obsolescent, or otherwise, just not compliant with the master planning of what we've programmed for the property. Those estimates conservatively are somewhere in the magnitude of $15 million to demolish and abate the buildings. So you can imagine the magnitude of what we're talking about, how long it's going to take, and what it is that we're trying to achieve. What we don't want to do is go through a 2-year process, find out we have a $15 million demolition and abatement program, and then the market's changed on us. So we need to get to it sooner rather than later. We're not trying to skirt any of the rules or the regulations. We just want to find the best way, the shortest distance between the 2 points. Somebody raised the point, I think it was Neil, or maybe it was the supervisor, the amount of criminal activity here at the site, in spite of the fact that since we bought the property, we've accelerated police activity, that we've hired the local police force, I think probably by a factor of 4, George, 4 or 5 times what it used to be. We're now paying, I don't know, on the order of 75 hours a week to the police department, and still, we just checked the record before this evening's meeting, there's been 139 incidents reported at this property, in spite of having 75 hours a week of police patrol. 6 people have been arrested, people have been injured, there are people living in these buildings. I mean, it's just an uncontrollable, you can imagine with 59 buildings, there's approximately 1.5 million square feet here. It's almost impossible to contain and manage, and the scrappers continue to, they're now tearing at the soffits and the gutters and the flashings in the roofs, and it's a little bit of a mini disaster. So the sooner we get to take these buildings down, I think the better off everybody's going to be. And I think the worst case, and I think Todd kind of made the point, the worst thing that happens is somehow we implode. I don't know how that happens, because this project's been allocated for funding, but somehow we implode. We only take down 2 buildings. You're 2 buildings ahead of the game, the way we look at it. So every time we advance the concept to another level and clean up the site and make it shovel ready for development, we're that much further ahead of the game. So the goal for us is to not eliminate the process, just to short cycle it, so that at the end of the day, maybe the entire process is 2 years during the seeker process and the demolition, so that when we get done with the approvals, hopefully, we have a project that's ready for development. And that, in short, is really the goal and the objective of what we've been trying to craft for all the months that we've been working behind the scenes to do the environmental assessment. And of course, in the meantime, we've qualified for the brownfield cleanup program under the state program at the northern part of the property. So that work is ongoing as well. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but we're at the point now where we're just about ready to file the application, and we ask that you consider the segmentation of the demolition so that we can work simultaneously to do that.
Now, what we're talking about specifically, how many buildings are in the area that we're focused on for tonight's purposes?
We have an exhibit that George will put up, and we'll go through it's an as-built of the property. We can show you where specifically we're referring to. Yeah, let's start with an aerial, give everybody an overview on what the property looks like. So again, working at the bottom of the page, that's Home Depot. You can just see a section of the Home Depot roof at the very bottom of the page here. And then working up from the north, obviously to the left is Route 9 and Cheney, Bill, I think you mentioned Cheney is the large horseshoe right here in the middle. That's the largest building on the site. That building's approximately 400,000 square feet. And it has, some of the worst conditions in it. Those three buildings, the three largest buildings, point them out, George, are right in the area which is slated for the commercial part of the development. None of them are on the historic register. So the three largest, most expensive, most unattractive, nuisance, problematic buildings are in the area where we would start this development in either case. We've always seen it as we'll start in the south and move north and across the property in order to get the commercial development moving, which will then drive the residential part of the property. So to be able to start to do that demolition while we're doing the approvals, environmental impact aside, which obviously we have to address, there'll have to be a separate SWIP filed and demolition, dust control, all those kinds of things has to be, will not be taken lightly, but that's the game plan is to be able to work simultaneously. Anybody have any questions on the aerial itself? We'll show you another exhibit that shows you some of the historic buildings and what's historic and what's not.
Now, those three buildings, I know you said they're not historic, but what are their ages? I can't recall what they even look like because I haven't looked up there in a while.
70s, 80s, George?
Okay.
This is late 60s, early 70s,
Okay.
the snow building.
Yeah, the snow building was the recreation building where the indoor pool and everything that, the building looks like an arrow. That was the recreation building.
Right. Ryan Hall's in the late 20s.
Excuse me, Todd, can you use the microphone?
George?
Late 20s. Have they been burned, the late 20s buildings, or are they?
Just make sure, there you go, you're on.
So the late 20s buildings, are they made out of brick, like most of the other?
Mostly masonry. There's been a lot of vandalism and break-in in this building. This is Ryan Hall. I'm told this is late 20s. And then you've got the late 30s and 40s for Cheney.
And which one has the graffiti you can see from Home Depot?
It's Ryan.
Which is what, I don't know how they got up there, about 3 stories up.
It's amazing, yeah. 3 stories up, yeah.
Man, it's incredible.
The latest is someone has hung a pirate flag off the top of the main admin building at the very, very, very highest top of the antenna up there.
It's become a game. I mean, there are many blogs online that show these people scaling the buildings, and they've captured the building and they put a pirate flag on the top of it because they believe they've taken control of it.
So, but again, just so we're clear, tonight, what we're talking about is this lower piece down by Home Depot that has the 3 big buildings on it. That's what we're talking about here in terms of just the demolition of those buildings.
And what about the little houses in front of them? Are they also being included?
Yes.
Yeah. And then what about the house that you can see from the main entrance, that first large stone house?
The director's house.
Yeah.
Over here. That would not be included.
Okay.
Basically, we're defining the southern portion of the property as everything south of Hudson View Drive.
Okay.
But you've got the Poucher home here, which is on the state contributing list.
Okay.
And then we've got a couple others. The small individual homes here that you see here, those are not on the register. And then this is the one building here, 61, is the one that's compromised by fire.
Yeah.
And is possibly in need of being condemned.
So the ones that aren't, the ones that aren't on the register, is it because of their condition or is it because of their age? I mean, will they become historical buildings if you did leave some of those houses up?
No, we don't think so. We actually walked the site with SHPO about, how long ago was that, George? Maybe 3 months?
It was longer than that. It was in the spring.
It was in the spring. Memory's fading. So in the spring, we walked it with one of the reps from SHPO who had been to the property. He was involved about 10 years ago. He hadn't been there in the last 10 years. He was shocked to see the amount of decay, even in his own eyes. He said
empty, right?
he was shocked. He actually did say, though, that everything in the southern portion, because it's not on the register, he didn't even want to look at it. He said, let's walk up to, we actually drove up to the admin building. We parked across the street from admin, and we did walk and drive the entire northern area for him. He wanted to put an eye on all of the buildings that were within the state register, and he wanted to see what condition they were. And he was floored to see the condition since he was there 10 years earlier. But all of the buildings to the south, frankly, he just even from a SHPO perspective, just wasn't even interested, didn't even want to go down there and look at them, had no desire.
And they'll go in the report, and they will be documented, and we photographed all the buildings already for SHPO purposes. Just to
What
understand,
does SHPO mean?
State Historic Preservation Office.
Sorry.
It's under Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least I know that they looked at it and they, I hate to see it go. It's something we've all driven by and seen, and I understand the conditions that it's in, but it's still, you just want to, I wouldn't want to be on a board to make the mistake where we knocked a historic building down. Sounds like you guys did all the right things. You had the State Historic Preservation Society there, so I appreciate those comments.
There will be, I was gonna say, there will be mitigation that will be done. It may be we file a report, it may be that we do some additional photography, there may be some historical documentation of it. They don't go without some type of remembrance.
That's good, good.
And are you going to open the site up for other photographers? At one point you had mentioned like a photography day to allow outside photographers in to take.
We wanted to do that, and we're still planning on doing that
Okay.
before we begin any demolition, which would be this fall, is what we're thinking.
Only on the exteriors, I mean, the
Yeah,
interiors
no,
of the
obviously
buildings.
only on the exteriors, yeah, obviously.
Just so people understand, the only building that's on the National Register is the admin building. That's the only one on the National Register.
And that building, the portion that's still standing, which we believe is structurally sound, is slated for, obviously, to be saved under our plan. We are talking to some of the other things we've been doing. We've hired a company that does hospitality reporting, and they do analysis for determining the demand for hotel rooms in a market. It's a national-based firm, and they're doing a hospitality analysis for us to determine whether or not there's enough demand to not only restore the admin building into a boutique kind of a hotel and conference center, but potentially add additional rooms, additional hotel rooms in some other new construction. So that report is underway as well.
Well, I always thought it'd make an awesome haunted hotel.
And we've had
that today.
We have had a couple of hotel operators look at the building. No one has committed to it yet, but they have looked at it.
Anything else?
No, I just think that, as far as it going, you guys are one of the few that have actually took the step forward to move forward. And with the cost of what this is going to do, to start in the bottom and work your way up has to help you guys tremendously. To get something going and get some money in the bank on top of that has to be a benefit. And you've looked very closely at what you want to take down, and I agree it should be taken down. I mean, I've been up there a few times for a few fires up there, and it's not the safest place. And
Scary.
There's probably a lot more going on that you can even find out that you don't see.
Well, the part that's hard to see from the outside is the fact that the scrappers have been at work here for probably 10 years. So they've ripped out most of the interior walls because all the plumbing's been removed. So now there's airborne asbestos all over the place because they just tore open the walls, and the cement, the plaster, everything is asbestos laden. So to have this stuff just be airborne with windows broken and asbestos blowing all over the place is not a great plan. I think the sooner we get rid of it, the better off everybody will be.
When you do tear it up, what's the contamination level of the ground up there?
The ground, the good and the bad news about that is the southern portion, essentially south of the main road coming in there, did not even qualify for the brownfield cleanup program because it's that clean that it didn't even qualify. The subsurface contamination, there was a landfill. George, just point out the landfill. That area there that's grass grown, that was a landfill that was capped, and all the proper COC, everything was issued. That's a cleaned up, capped landfill. There is no other contamination that we're aware of on the southern portion. The same cannot be said for the northern portion, where the power plant and the garage and other things were. There is some subsurface contamination. In fact, the state has asked us to remove those buildings for further testing environmentally, because sub-slab there are potential environmental issues that we don't know about yet. So that's kind of a separate issue, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We have to start somewhere, and we have to start in a way that's economically viable. And again, the commercial end of this deal will eventually drive the residential portion. So it works out coincidentally that the buildings that are not on the historic register, which happen to be the most environmentally tainted from an asbestos standpoint and the largest for demolition, happen to be down in the southern portion of the property, which I guess is good news.
Yeah, and also, what firm did you use to do the survey of the buildings? Firm?
That was Quest.
Quest?
Quest? Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm always impressed by the amount of investment you have in this already. And, whether at the end of the day we agree with the end product or not, I think the important point is that for the municipality's benefit, there's not people or companies that are going to come by every day with the kind of resources to undertake a project like this. So I would agree. I think the sooner we can start, taking down the buildings where it makes sense, the better off for everybody.
It's beneficial for us in more ways than one.
I agree.
And by the way, we appreciate the comment. We've always look at projects like this. These are complex projects from many different, standpoints, and these are always kind of public-private partnerships that make these things happen, because there are so many moving parts to these things that without a cooperative environment, it just never gets done.
Anything else from the board? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for the report, guys.
All right. Next up on the committee of the whole is a discussion. Potential code amendments. First one is building and zoning. We've got A, B, and C, so we'll handle one at a time. We'll start with A, building and zoning fees.
Thank you. Does everybody have a copy, I hope?
You sent one out electronically, so.
Yeah.
Hi, you should have a little.
Okay. All right. One of the things that has come up a couple of times in the past several years, and I'm going to actually just flip to page 2. We've had occasion where building permits have expired. And we've had applicants come back to this board asking for relief from having to pay in total a brand new building permit fee. This board has, I think, generally given relief, either in total or in part. But one of the things that I've been talking with our building inspector, Tim Sickles, about is putting something in our fee schedule that basically takes care of it. And so that's primarily what you're seeing on page 2 under Chapter 68, Building Construction. The new language is the underlying text, and it just sort of starting very simply. At the very top where we have where it says new 1- and 2-family homes, that's existing language. The existing fee is $100 plus 40 cents per square foot. Then the new language immediately under it is a renewal of a permit for a new or 1- or 2-family home. In addition, it's $100 plus 20 cents per square foot. In other words, we're discounting the permit renewal by 50%, which is kind of what this board has been doing for several of the requests that you have received. And so it sort of follows through and tracks that idea that we're discounting the renewal, we're not making them pay a whole brand new fee, and particularly for the commercial at the bottom, it can get pretty expensive to have to pay a whole new fee. And just so we're clear too, the issues for the renewal of permits tend not to be about commercial. The commercial developers, once they start, they move. They want to get in the ground, they want to be finished. Where we tend to see the problem is on the residential end. Somebody starts a construction, can't quite finish it if he's doing himself, whatever. And those are the ones that I think that, by this kind of a system, we're providing relief. They don't have to make a special appearance before this board requesting a discount or a waiver of the fees, but it's already built into the fee schedule. So this is the recommendation.
Something for the board to consider,
Yeah.
To think about. If you have questions, we can do something, we don't do anything. But it was something that, as Neil said, he and the building inspector have discussed. If you think it makes sense, look it over, read it, and, send your comments in, and we can take it up when we want to, if we want to. And then you want to move right on to B?
Yeah, actually, just to page 8, just want to call attention, we have a new tree preservation local law. I added a fee of $250 for the application, which I think is fair and reasonable.
Yep. Anything else?
Yeah, let me back up. So again, on page, oh, I have a strikeout here. Wait, I didn't mean to strike out. Again, page 8, just immediately above that new chapter 187. You see a line that says recreation fees in lieu of land, $5,000 per lot or $5,000 per dwelling unit, whichever is greater. This particular section is pertinent to chapter 177 of which is our subdivision law. And this has actually been in our code for quite a while. But this applies for projects where there is a subdivision of land. We do have projects that come in actually under Chapter 210, if you flip the page to page 9, where they receive a site plan review and approval only. Typically apartment complexes, things like that, where there is no subdivision of land. We don't presently, and we have not had a similar language in the code. There is language in our zoning code that essentially directs the any calculation of a recreation fee would come back before this board. I thought it was more expedient to simply copy the language for the recreation fee from the subdivision section and insert it in zoning. That way it's clear as to exactly what the fee is.
Try to eliminate any...
It eliminates any questions and haggling and things like that.
Good.
A lot of this makes sense, Neil, so I do like it.
Okay.
Especially if you feel from your experience that it's necessary for these changes. I've got no problem with it. I know we talked earlier about setting up some of those changes to the modifications of the renovations. I've got no problem with that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that this, again, people want certainty. And, if we've got sort of vagueness in our codes, we need to, try to
And those
clean
are
that up.
also, yeah. So.
Yeah. Now, there may be, and we don't really, whenever there are fees that are modified, they're either done directly by the town board. My only concern, quite selfishly, is the stuff that the code sections that I deal with, which is zoning and the building and subdivision regulations and things like that, which are germane to the departments that I'm responsible for. But there may be other code sections that are, for which, this board may want to consider, amending fees. And
Just
if
looking
there are,
quick, I saw
please let
4
me know.
things that are wrong or could be changed.
Yeah, I'm open to suggestions, so.
Okay.
Now, my recollection too, and I guess I'll ask Jim Nelson this. I think the approval of the amended fee schedule can be done by resolution. I think my recollection was when we updated the fees a couple of years ago. We got to double check that. So in other words, I don't think that it necessarily requires.
I think we did a local law.
Yeah, I think we just do it by resolution. We empowered the board to do it by resolution, I think. So in other
check that,
words,
Jim?
if you guys wanted to do this next week, we could. But, we obviously have maybe some additional input if Alicia has some items.
Yep. Would it be
So-
good to send something to each department?
I totally agree. I was thinking that myself. Give everybody
I think at the
a
end,
look at it.
at the end of the day, if we want to get something accomplished, I always believe I'd rather take a lot of small bites than try to be all encompassing, otherwise we'll never get anything accomplished. And at the end of the day, additionally, I would just remind everyone, when you're talking about fees, keep in mind who's paying them and who's, it's always easy to say, oh geez, I think that ought to be higher until.
My thing is, though, it's always cheaper, I think, with general code, if you change one chapter, you do the whole chapter instead of keep going
true.
back.
True.
That's where the fees are.
I just think, I would agree with that,
Creative.
yep. So I just think we have to be careful and cautious, and I'd rather get, especially in some of these instances where there might be discrepancy, to get those done right away, so we alleviate those issues. But,
There's some that's just plain mistakes.
okay.
I saw
Well,
my department.
Make sure, okay.
Take your effort.
You want to go on to B? Explain, I think that's just a,
Yeah, B, It was pointed out to me recently
Just an
that
oversight,
in our
basically.
heavy and our light industrial zones, that somehow or another, we managed not to allow office as a use. Seems to me that maybe we ought to correct that. So what I'd like to do is to give you an amendment to set a public hearing. I can give that to you very quickly next week, and we can get that cleaned up. We've had a number of individuals who've come in looking for space in our industrial zones, and it was pointed out to me that we don't allow office. Okay, I think we can take care of that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
C?
C, I'd like to give the board an amendment. This actually has to do with the testing that we do for heating contractor historically. The test has actually been one that has been administered directly by the department. We're moving toward online testing. There are a number of testing companies. This happens to be one of them. The language in the code right now talks about the fire inspector administering the test. I'd like to give you a code amendment that would allow for the fire inspector to designate which test would be given or have to be taken.
And while these are online tests, they're also done at a testing site. They'll have to go to actually a controlled testing site. It's not something they can do in their own home. So you actually have to register.
So it's not an open book test?
No, and it's not like the classes my son took with his girlfriend sitting next to him Googling all the answers. So he did very well. But
Currently, for a heating contractor, do we require a license? This is.
This is part of the licensure, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this is a good move.
But this is the test we have talked about, that it's a one-page, I guess, 10-question.
Yeah. it's
And we
the
don't
same-
charge for it.
And it's the same test everybody gets year to year to year to year, so.
Well, I think there's like 3 of them, and they rotate through. But
Yeah.
eventually, these guys hit enough of them. You can fail it and just come back the next day and take it again, and take it again. Eventually, they hit enough of them that they figure them out.
The plumbing board ever do the same thing? I know we talked
The
about it.
plumbing board is working on now moving from the test, and actually, that's become another problem too. The people they did have the test with that came and brought it here and did it 3 times a year don't want to come unless we have a certain number of applicants. And right now, we only have 2, and they say, no, we don't want to come here, so they want us to go to White Plains instead, send them there, so. This way here, with the company they're looking at going with, it's open all day, every day of the week, on the weekends. And once they get approval to go take the test, they can take it at their leisure. And one testing site's in Albany, I think the other one is in White Plains. But once you pass the test, that's it, you don't have to take it again. So it's a one-time.
Beautiful.
And also, it's going to save the applicants money, because currently now we have to charge for whoever comes in and does the test. They bring a proctor with them, and they also have to, part of the fee we charge is to cover the cost of the proctor. So this way it'll be less expensive for the applicants too, they just have to pay for the test.
All right. All right. Thank you, Neil.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along. Next up, we have, and our last discussion item is from Councilman Carlos, and this is involving Hillis Terrace.
Right. Did we give copies out for the people in the audience of this? No?
I was given 12, so no, but I have a copy or 2 that I could share.
Mr. Dawes, take my copy, so you have an idea.
Billy, do you want this one?
If it's in there, yeah. It's not coming up on this computer. My fellow board members would remember in July, I don't remember which meeting in July, Mr. Dawes is a constituent of mine who lives on Hillis Terrace. And he had some questions with respect to the town and our ability to deal with water in that area. That led to a series of, thank you. That led to a series of meetings, discussions, and my request to our engineering, and I have to compliment Don Beers and Sean. They did this work, which is very good work, in a short period of time, in between the things they had to do for the rest of the town. what I found out is that the municipality, we cannot use taxpayer dollars to solve a problem on a piece of property that belongs to an individual. We can't do that. There's no way around that. That's just simply the facts. So I asked, I committed to Mr. Dawes that I would get him an answer, and I asked our people to help me with the answer. And what they've come up with is what you're looking at. I'm on infrastructure, so being on infrastructure, I understand that we do have a town-wide drainage district. We have in the past, and I don't know how many years ago, used that to do projects in the town. And that would be a separate conversation and discussion amongst all of us, not to do with this particular project. This particular project, when I first went into engineering and spoke about it, they started to tell me about the end of Brooklyn Farms Road, where the pond is actually over on the country club property. And the people in those houses move out when it's going to be a heavy rainstorm because it gets 6 and 8 feet deep. That is just over a ridge line. If you look at the map, these double lines that you see here that run through, that's the Central Hudson right-of-way. There's power lines there. There's also a very big ridge line that runs just almost on this second line, straight through. Hillis Terrace, which is the circular area, this is like a big bowl. There's a ridge line to its south, there's a ridge line to its north. With Brooklyn Farms, there's a ridge line that runs right through here. So there's two bowls that collect water. The one up on Hillis Terrace, and unfortunately Mr. Dawes' house is right at the bottom of that, and the one down here. So when engineering looked at this, they looked at it as in a way that could we come up with a plan where we could deal with solving the problem for more people in that whole area. So the areas that you see darkened, we're going to call those benefit units. Let me explain to you how this works. Can you see the little arrow thing I'm using?
Yeah.
Okay, right now in Hillis Terrace, we have catch basins. And they only hold as much water as they are big, and after that, the water falls out of them.
They're dry wells, right?
Right.
Right.
Right down here is between two pieces of property. It's a flat area. At least one of the people that live in this area have an old sump pump system where they pump the water from their yard, and they'll have a 4-foot deep pond here, up over the ridge line to where the power lines are. This right here, remember when they were doing Dunkin' Donuts on South Road under the parking lot with those orange, like Quonset hut things? They do a base of gravel, they put these on, they fill it with gravel, then they seed and have a lawn above it. That can store thousands of gallons of water and allow it to seep into the ground. So, that would be the first part of this project. When that fills up, it has to be pumped. There's no other way to get water out. So this line that you see coming up Hillis Terrace and making this turn to the left, this is the pump. This will be a 4-inch forced main. Again, for the project to go forward, we need to get easements from these two property holders. This is estimated right now at 120 feet by 80 feet until such time as they actually do the study, if this was to go forward. We don't know whether it's going to have to be 200 feet, but at least it'll be the start of the problem. Now, another easement, right through here, up over the ridge line to here. So, the water gets pumped. If this fills up, and they tell me in a 1, 2, or 3 year storm, it wouldn't fill up. But if it fills up, if we have that hurricane or whatever, the pump system comes on and it pumps 300 gallons a minute up to here. Okay? And then gravity fed down to the pond. Well, that's not going to make too many of these people in here very happy if we're pumping 300 gallons a minute from the top. So the idea is, again, with an easement, to come into the pond, enlarge it as necessary to create the storage level, and again, force pump it up a main to this point or it goes into a natural stream.
Very good.
So what the plan is, based on what they came up with, there's a lot of work. I mean, Sean went up several times. It solves the drainage problem for people in all of the colored properties. The top part of Hillis Terrace and down into the middle, that's going downhill. So water flows downhill. Those houses may or may not have a problem. So the idea then is to create a drainage district for this area. Let the drainage district deal with this and share the costs there. What's been explained to me by council and by Neil and the other people we have as resources in town, that's the only way something like this can be done. The board may have knowledge, because you've been here a long time, I don't, that we've done things like this in the past in different areas using that town-wide drainage district.
We've done, and attempted to do, I don't think it's ever been approved anywhere, sewer districts under the same philosophy. The public gets an opportunity, we spell out all the costs, give the residents who are being served by the district an idea of what the costs are, get to actually come and vote, and if a majority of them vote to move forward, we create the district and they're billed on an annual basis for 20 years, 30 years.
I don't know if you can see this. If you can't see it so well, it's in your handouts. This is an estimate. This is that map plan and review that we do. And it's listing the costs. These are all estimates. This is without any kind of drilling down to determine how deep the clay goes. This is the costs of the easement, those two houses on Hillis Terrace.
Yeah.
We have to pay those people to use their property to build this storage place. The easement up over the hill, the force pump, the pumps, all of the costs come up into this, and this is the chart they gave. And it comes down to this. Based on what they show me and what they tell me, there would be 39 benefit units. That's 39 houses would be helped by this. The total estimated cost of that project, you can see 1.170, 1.1, almost $1.2 million. The items below it are the estimates based on a 3% bond at 20 years and a 3% bond at 30 years. If you look right here, at 39 benefit units, it's approximately $1,518 a year.
Now, those benefit units, we're not, is that just a kind of a?
I haven't, let me go back to the thought that, then we have to talk, and Mr. Dawes and the people up there have to understand what has to happen. The dark shaded areas are all units in the benefit district.
The gray and the black.
The gray and the black. There's no mechanism for us to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to be those individuals. So Mr. Dawes or his neighbors that are involved,
Mm-hmm.
the lady in the house at the bottom whose husband passed away and she has the pumps, they would have to get a petition. And the petition would have to be the normal legal kind of petition with notarized signatures on it of those people. So there's 39 units. If you get more than half, we can have a vote. I would suggest you go to at least 2/3 of those houses saying yes. We could have a vote to see whether or not the district would survive. Until that happens, till that comes to us officially, we can't do anything with this. We don't have the ability to spend the money to do this benefit without there being a district.
Actually, I was just thinking about it. Where we did, it wasn't a drainage, but where something was done on a similar mind frame is the Carriage Hill Bridge, and that was 12 years ago.
Right.
The residents in Carriage Hill had, they were benefiting from the reconstruction of this covered bridge, so they actually had to vote, go through the similar process. The majority of them said, yeah, we're willing to pay X number of dollars for X number of years, and they voted to approve that project, and they have been for the last, 12 years being, receiving that fee on their tax bill.
Mr. Dawes, I told you I would get back to you on behalf of the town. This is the solution. This is the solution the town as a government entity can do. I asked the question, let's suppose that there's a property that it's at the bottom of this bowl and has a lot of water in it, and he has his own pumps, or he has his own contractor do something for that. Well, then, with permission from the board, it can be allowed or I think the highway superintendent can give you permission to attach to the well, to the dry well, to the seam, so the water could then be pumped into the system.
Thank you. I had several conversations with different people in the town about this, including the highway superintendent, Mr. Pfeiffer. And my problem's twofold. We need a way to collect the water that's coming down the streets in this area. There's a lot of benefit units here covering several streets. And I also need a way to get rid of the water that collects on my property that has no place to go. And when
Mr. Dawes, the same thing, the same rule would apply to you as to any other person. You make an application to the highway superintendent, he grants you permission to have your pump, let's say you put a pump in the backyard, to have your pump connect to the system so that you would pump the water out of your property, as any one of these people could do, and into the system. That's all they can do. They can't put something on your property, they can't build it, they can't do that. But you would be allowed to attach to the system. The system from your house down to that, I guess you'd call it a infiltration, that pink thing on the map, that infiltration, that's downhill from you. So your water would go out to the street, to the town drainage dry well. It wouldn't be a dry well then, it'll actually be connected. What you see as dry wells now would be connected. You can see the lines actually drawn on Hillis Terrace. These red lines, they will be connected so that the water coming down the hill from either side on the highway would go into this infiltration point.
Would my connection be above ground or below ground?
I don't know. I'm not an
Because
engineer.
Mr.
All this
Pfeiffer
work, I'm
said-
assuming all this work will be underground. So it would have to be underground. You'd have to get permission to do that.
Yeah, that would be the
But
preferred method.
that's not given to you solely as a benefit to you. Any of the people
Right.
could do that. So I think the man at the bottom of Brooklyn Farms, these 3 or 4 or 5 houses down here, who have to leave when we have a bid, they actually leave their houses because of the amount of water. I didn't know that. I've lived in this town 30 years. I've worked in a town since 1974. I never knew it got that bad at the end of that street.
I've lost use of my home for up to 5 weeks at a time.
So you can see then, this is the plan. This is what I'm told is the only way government can help in a situation like this, and it's actually responding to those people. So I would suggest that you and whoever else has the most here, circulate the petition, knock on the doors, bring it back, submit it to the supervisor of the town, and the town will make the...
I think even before you do that, if you want to circulate a petition, I think the wording on these petitions needs to be pretty exact. It needs to be pretty accurate, or otherwise someone can challenge it. So if you think you want to start circulating a petition for this purpose, let Councilman Carlos know, and he can work with our attorney to help with that wording, because I know just from past experience, the wording's got to be pretty accurate.
Before we even go there, I think we need a public forum to discuss this and invite the people in these benefit properties to that meeting. A lot of them don't even realize there's a problem because they're on the high end.
Well, then for them, there's not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're not going to be
it's
the
like
one to pay it.
It's like when you try to get a sewer. I remember on Boardman Road a number of years back, I circulated, I walked myself asking, they don't have townwide sewer through there. The people who were having septic problems said, yeah, we're all for it, we'll sign. The people who weren't said, we're not interested. And that's always the way it goes, so.
I think that's going to be the response from a majority of these property owners, because their water is going in my yard and other people's yards, and they're happy. They don't see it as a problem. You're not going to get 39 people to sign up for this. I don't think you're going to get half of that.
You would need a majority.
But
51%.
first, somebody has to.
Force the vote, to have a vote. I understand we have to use voting machines.
Yeah, it's gotta be official. You gotta actually have people
Step one
vote.
is to
wherever
have
that
enough
happens
people
to be.
say yes, so as to have a vote.
But I think somebody has to call these people together first and explain the situation to them.
I don't
They're
think
going to say,
we can
what
do that.
drainage problem? I don't have a drainage problem.
You can do as a councilman, have a,
Well, Councilman
meeting.
Carlos.
I can call a meeting.
You, Councilman Carlos?
yeah.
If I can call a meeting, I'd gladly call a meeting.
Listen, what you would do, it wouldn't be a formal town board meeting. You'd
Committee of the whole.
circulate a flyer, have a meeting at the Red Oak Hills Firehouse or, something like that, close to where they are. If they're interested, they'll come out.
Years
That's
ago,
the general
Tower
idea.
had one at the middle school at Arlington.
Yeah.
Just as a,
Okay, so if that's the first step, if I can help do that, I'll gladly do that.
There's no other alternative other than this mechanism to help this gentleman?
I was pretty,
Problem
I
is
can
you
be
get those
pretty
steps.
persuasive with my questions, and there's no other way for us to do this.
No, Mike, and what they do say is, I tried a sewer district once and I followed actually in Todd's footsteps and followed it. There's a chance that you can get grant money, but you can't apply for anything until you vote to start the district. So you can't say, we could guarantee you, $500,000. You can't guarantee anything because you can't apply for anything until you exist. So it's not like you can go and apply for a grant and say, if we get it, we're gonna do it. You're sort of like stuck in the middle until you apply,
And I asked that specifically. Remember, I asked you for the non-point source grants, and that's all connected to this. But we can only respond to what comes from the people.
Did our engineers have an idea of what this gentleman can do for his personal property to get the water off his property?
He's got some contractors who've got some very good ideas, but he is at the bottom of the bowl. He has to pump the water off of his property. He can't pump it out.
If I remember correctly, you had a neighbor who let you pump off into their property, but that may end at any time, correct?
Yeah, that property was recently sold. I haven't met the new owners yet, but I don't expect that to continue. But I don't think this is going to be feasible if the net cost per year or per benefit homeowner is $1,500 and change, and that's based on 39 benefit properties, and we only get half. What happens then? It goes up to $3,000 per home?
No. You have
Is
to
it all or
get,
nothing at all?
Yeah.
you have to get half to, at least 51% to say, we want to move forward with this project.
And the cost will still be based on 39 benefit properties,
Yes.
not
No, you
20?
don't.
Yeah.
What I gave you, the numbers that you have in front of you, are simply the people in the engineering department here in this building estimating the cost of the gravel, of these Quonset hut things for the infiltration, of the length of pipe, of the pumps, approximately the cost now. When they actually, if it starts to go ahead in terms of engineering, the price could go up from there or down. Let's suppose that where we want to put that infiltration point, it'd be like trying to put an in-the-ground pool in, and there's a massive bluestone bridge there. Now there's blasting, and the price goes up. So this is an estimate for the people who are involved to have an idea of what this structure is, who can benefit from it, and whether or not they want to go forward with it. There's no way that we can simply do it for one property. We can't spend the money for that. We're just barred from doing it.
Before a vote was taken, let me just get this right. If it got to the point where it looked like there was enough interest, numbers would have to be a lot more, concrete. And the residents would be told, look, it's going to be, $500 to $600 a year for 20 years. I mean, they're going to need to be, this is a starting point, and this is an estimation to give you and I guess the other people in that area an idea of what the cost would be, but they'd have to be more concrete but at least I think what Councilman Carlos wanted to do is, get some type of estimation or some type of way to move this water through there. It would be in a very expensive, there's no doubt it would be a very expensive project. It's a very difficult area to resolve this water issue. But, he has at least come up with a, first plan as to how this water could be moved to a suitable area.
Has anyone else in the town expressed a concern other than myself about drainage problems in this?
I don't know about this area. Overall in the town wide,
Individual has to
there's
leave his
issues.
house when we get every rain, he leaves. I guess similar to what you have to do. I'm sure, I haven't spoken with him, but I'm sure that's a man who would be in support of this. And plus his immediate neighbors.
That's 2 out of 39.
But you gotta go and try. That's
you
what
have
I
to-
recommend you. If you're in that neighborhood, just go
You're
and.
saying I have to go out and sell this to 39 homeowners in the town of
No,
Poughkeepsie?
Mr. Dow, what Councilman Carlos is trying to provide you with is at least some type of solution to your problem that's existed for, how long have you been in your house?
36 years.
For 36 years. So it's a starting point. No one's telling you have to do anything, but what the councilman's trying to do is give you some place to start. He, I'm sure, would work with you in contacting these neighbors and speaking to them, see if there's enough of an interest to move forward. You're right. If there's 30 of these homes on high ground, they're not going to be interested in helping you with your problem.
I think that's a foregone conclusion.
well,
They don't
then-
care now. They haven't cared for the last 36 years. And the town's telling me, don't put it in the street because it'll go on your neighbor's property. I said, well, where do you think it's coming from? I think it's an exercise in futility.
Well,
To try to
I
get
don't know.
even 51% of these people to subscribe to this and pay additional taxes.
Well, that may be. I don't know. That's something,
The next step is to put some flyers out and have a meeting, we can do that.
I think at least that way we would find your answer if there is interest, to have a forum with Mr. Carlos and bring the engineering department and explain it to them. You may be other people out there that have more of a problem than you think, that are quiet and just think there is no resolve to it too.
The town made several attempts to remedy this problem. They put these dry wells on the back circle, but they're closed systems. They don't take the water away from the area. So as soon as we get a heavy rain, they fill up, overflow, and we're back to square one. But I think that it's incumbent on the town to fix what they did, make it a working system.
This is a neighborhood that was built 40 years ago.
55, to be exact.
55 years ago.
We've
So,
been-
this isn't something, I recognize it's a problem for a certain number of homeowners in there, but it's a problem that existed for 50 years. It's very difficult to fix a problem like that. You're at the bottom of a bowl. To pump that water up out of there is a major, there's a reason when your neighborhood was developed, they didn't put drainage in. It's probably virtually impossible.
The area where the 2 dry wells are is 2 doors down past my property. That's the lowest lying area on the back circle, and it's not far from these power lines where Central Hudson has this right-of-way. And the head, in order to lift to get the water out of those drains, is much lower down there than it is to go the other way over the ridge that blocks this back circle in. I don't think it would be that much more money, but I'm no engineer, to connect those dry wells to that right-of-way area.
But where does it go from there? Are you saying there's a drainage line in the right-of-way? We can't just empty water into the Central Hudson right-of-way because it's going to go somewhere.
Mr.
Well,
Lewis,
they
when there's a
would have to
right-of-way,
build a cistern or some system in
When-
the ground in order to absorb that water.
that Central Hudson right-of-way goes behind my house.
It's huge.
Right.
Huge.
You have to understand that the people whose property that power line goes over owns the property.
Yes.
There's a right-of-way to give Central Hudson the power to put it, but it's private property underneath it.
I visited one of those homeowners yesterday.
Power lines is a lot different than pumping 300 gallons a minute onto it. And we just recently had didn't we have some place where we did a cul-de-sac and the way it was done caused the people downhill from them to start flooding? I don't remember where it was. So to just run a line up over the hill and dump the water out into the power line property doesn't solve it. It just pumps, the water flows downhill. You're the subject of that phenomenon right now. This
Yeah, but I'm a
doesn't
quarter
solve.
of an acre. This is many, many acres of land.
Sure.
And it's a major depression there.
Well, I told you I would give you an answer. It may not be the best answer, it may not be the only answer, but it's the answer that our engineers came up with.
But you're
And I
pushing
will
it.
certainly help with flyers and setting up a meeting at the firehouse or wherever we can down there. Maybe at Oak Grove School, because it's close to everybody. And I'll gladly help you do that. But it was clearly been explained to me, the town can't just simply go in and start doing this. It can't. There's not a conduit inside the town government to start doing this. It has to be done this way, the way I just described it to you.
Now, if the councilman can look at a solution. If you think there's, a lower lying area, he can certainly have discussions with engineering, but my view would be if engineering came up with this plan, in their estimation, this is going to be the best solution to move this water through there. I don't think they look for, something that wasn't the most optimal.
To me, it's a problem that was caused by your predecessors many years ago, approving this area for building homes when there was no plan for drainage. It's a problem that the town owns. I don't think it's fair for you to push it back on me, saying I have to go out there and I have to sell it to the community and get a petition and get everybody to buy into it.
I think Councilman Carlos, I don't think anybody's telling you that. I think Councilman Carlos can do the legwork. That would be his responsibility to walk a petition. At the end of the day, if there's not enough people interested in taking part in this solution, it's not going to go anywhere. As most of the sewer, what do you call them, sewer districts we've attempted over the years. The one I tried on Boardman, I know up on Route 44, a number of times it was tried, and Councilman Seminara down in your area tried one a number of years back. None of them went forward as far as I can tell for that very reason we're discussing. The people who don't have a problem didn't want to pay. The people who had a problem said, yeah, we're in, but the more people, the bigger the district, the less the expense. So it's advantageous to try to capture more properties. But, the Councilman Carlos I don't think he's telling you got a lot of work to do. He can do the legwork. He's already done work on trying to find a solution to a 50-year-old difficult problem, and he can certainly do some legwork with you. But, beyond that, I don't know what else he can do.
The bottom line is, if it fails, if it comes down to 3 people, the amount of money involved, they can't, you physically can't do it. Meaning to you, there's no solution that we can give to you to your problem. We can't help you individually.
But it's not just my problem. I just happen to be the only one that's come forward.
Okay, well, this will be a chance for the others to come forward and see if they have it. Here's a plan. It's sort of like standing up in front of everybody and saying, here's a plan. Shoot at it, take it apart, discuss it, say you want to do it or say you don't want to do it. That's the way we run this country of ours. So I've taken the first step and done this. And I'll take the next step and send the flyers out and try and have a meeting. And we'll have a petition right there. And they can sign up if they support it or not. And if they don't support it, that means the people that want to do it, the cost becomes more. And if it gets to the point that the individual people who are most directly involved can't afford it, then the project can't get done. There's no other solution that the town of Poughkeepsie can offer to you.
I'm not even sure I understand why we would have to pay additional taxes to have this done.
Well, he just said it would have to be set up as a special district, and as a special district, the residents have to pay for it, that's why.
But it's stormwater, not drinking water.
Listen, go ahead, Jim.
I'm Jim Nelson, I work for these people.
Yes, sir.
And what Mr. Carlos said about the idea of a public entity spending money to benefit a homeowner is something which bumps up against actually a state constitutional prohibition against making gifts of public property to individuals. Now, with that said, I've listened to the questions that each of them have asked, and I've got some notes to discuss with Mr. Carlos after the meeting. But the idea of a town going in and spending public money for the benefit of a sole homeowner is something which, and I didn't research it for this meeting, but it's very problematic. So I assure you that it appears to me that what's going on here is people are exploring for ways to relieve this problem and to do it in a way that is proper. And it may take a little bit of work, and it's already taken a lot of work to get this proposal, which Mr. Carlos just presented to you. So, again, pardon me, I'm not elected, I don't vote on the board, but I think the idea is that this is a point to start from. He and I are going to talk, and it appears to me that he's committed to trying to seek a solution, and it may take some adjustment before one can be reached.
Mr. Nelson, I understand your point completely about not being able to spend taxpayer money on something that would only give my property added value. I'm only asking for what everyone else in the town has that's already built into their tax base. Drainage. We have none. We never had any. I'm paying the same taxes as the people all over the town of Poughkeepsie who have storm drains in front of their homes and proper drainage. I never had it. I've been paying for that for 36 years, and the former owner of my property goes back to 55 years. We're paying for something we never got. I shouldn't be have to pay a surcharge to get what everyone else in the rest of the town has had since day one.
Well, not everybody. There's there's a number of roads in town that don't have drainage. They were built without townwide drain. We don't have townwide drainage.
You go just over the hill off the back circle, which goes 0.8 of a mile down to Vassar Road, and there's storm drains in front of every other home. Mm-hmm. And they're not paying extra for it, are they?
You can go up Spagnhill Road, and there's townwide sewer up to, I don't know, maybe Colburn, but once you get over the hill, they stop. The reason I suspect they stopped is because they hit the hill, they hit rock, it became too expensive, so years ago when they built the system, they didn't go down Boardman. I don't know if Colburn has it. I think part may, part. But there's areas that they didn't put these infrastructure in, and I assume it 50 years ago, 40 years ago when they did it, it was because of the expense that when they hit rock, they hit a spot like yours, where they hit the ridge, and to go up and over or to go through would have been a
lot of the water entering my property is coming from the street. That's the town's problem.
Well, I think we could certainly put, and we can solve that. We can put, berms on the side of the road, tar berms. I don't think that's
They put the berms in years ago, and every time they get breached by a snowplow or something, the water comes in again.
Right, we could take care of that, but I think you're probably getting water other than off the road.
There's no place for the water to go that comes down the street except into someone's property, whether it's mine or Brittenham, 2 doors down, or someone else.
Look,
there's no place for it to go.
Right, I understand.
That's a town problem.
I understand what you're saying. You heard our councilor's position. Councilman Carlos will continue to work with you and the other residents, if there are others in your area that have the drainage issue, and see if we can come up with a solution. But, we're not getting anywhere at this point.
All right, we'll have to continue this discussion offline. I don't want to take up any more of your time this evening.
Okay, I understand your frustration. Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Let's take, before we go to committee reports, and I often forget committee reports, but let's take public comment on town issues. Is there anyone here who'd like to address the board? Doreen? Wow, how do we get 3 chairs up there? Someone snuck a chair in.
Just like to comment on the Hudson Heritage Project. I doubt that the majority of the board will agree with me, but I just have to say it. Mr. Wilson tried to package this up all very nice and neat, but bottom line is it's segmentation under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And to me, this appears to be a way to skirt the rules and regulations of the state and the town by allowing demolition or tree removal or anything before the secret process is complete. So, like I said, somebody needs to say it, and I've said it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Joe?
Couple of subjects, and the one with this Hudson Heritage. I've come to a few meetings and constantly hear people come in with their private little problems. They will need a little more footage here, a little more footage there. There's rules and regulations that have been set down in place. And I tell you, I just think there's too many times that we try to get around these rules. They were put in there for a reason. And what happens if we give this outfit the right to go and do it there? First, he said a few buildings. Now it's 53 of the 59 or something to knock down, whatever. But what happens after we give them this right and they do this, they knock things down, they do this, they do that, and they don't get the right to go ahead and do it with this Sikora
I can give you my
thing.
opinion on
We have a
that.
bunch of buildings that are
They may need
causing
to
us-
come down, I
they're
understand
causing
that,
us
and it's good
problems.
for.
They're causing, you heard
These will
that
go
they-
back on a tax roll, I understand that. But to try
we're
to
getting rid of a blight that
circumvent
we
these
can't afford to get rid
rules.
of.
Sometimes, in my view is, I agree, we have rules in place. The reason we put rules in place is for the good of the community, generally speaking, right? And when you have something that, what's the point in being so hard, fast? We're not talking about, overall, I think he said 52 buildings. What he's talking about tonight is the three down below.
Right.
And maybe a few smaller ones. I don't think anybody could make an argument that it's not better for the community as a whole if these buildings are gone. And I asked myself the question, let's suppose they tear these three buildings down, which are big structures, and they go belly up, or like the last firm, the
Yeah, well,
economy
that's-
stinks again and they walk away. Well, you know what? We don't have three big asbestos-filled buildings in the
Knocked
town of
down.
Poughkeepsie anymore. We got vacant land.
And if they go belly up after they knock them down, before they clean them up, then who's got the task of making it right?
Oh, I'm sure.
And they're going to go on a tax roll, I assume, so that's good too.
Oh, eventually,
And I'm not
if-
against the buildings, they should have been done a long time ago. But is there any way to get into this outfit that has the right to give them the ruling that they want to push this project along the way it should be pushed along?
I think it's just, I think the project's,
You get halfway through
the whole
things and all of a
project's such a
sudden they walk
massive
away, we're
project, I
stuck
think it
with
just
the-
takes so
with the
long.
aftermath. But the other subject, and I'm not going to get into a lot of details, if they set up a meeting, I'll certainly be there and I'll get my own petition up. This is nothing more, first off, the houses never should have been built there. Whether, who's at fault for it, who knows, that's a long way back. And now you're asking the rest of us to pay $1,000 or whatever it could be a year for 2, 3, or 4 houses. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to have to pay for the people that you're going to get a right of way through to dump this water into the thing. Those people will go for it because they're going to get the money to pay for it through the right of way. The 2 houses that are down by the swamp right now, yeah, they get it close to their property once in a while. I've been there for quite a few years. I don't ever remember any of them people having to leave their houses. Maybe once. If they did, I don't know. And this ain't going to go. I'll tell you that right now. You got my house included in here, and I'm 30 feet above that swamp.
So
The guy next to me is probably
you don't
that
have
far.
you don't have any problem with drainage on your property, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
So-
right. Of course I don't.
So you vote no?
I'll come.
It can't be.
I'll come.
Somehow I think
You
Mr.
can bet
Robinson
on
will
that.
be there and you'll
So,
hear from him.
Can't be imposed.
I
Has to be
understand that.
accepted.
I understand what you're saying. But you're
There's
putting
no
your-
way that we're going to do something that's going to impact the people who
Oh, yeah.
don't want it.
I understand that. And this project shouldn't even been presented this way, in my opinion. And the easement behind our houses, that's the old IBM Country Club property. So you got to pay easements now to the person that owns that property, and you're running a hell of a length for it to pump this water away, right? And if this swamp ever gets flooded out, you got a sewer pump there that could be flooded out because of it, because of what's coming in there. And if the pumps that are going to do it, I mean, there's so much involved in this setup that.
That it's worth 1 point.
Well, you let me know when you're having a hearing, because I will be.
There's
here.
one-
You'll be notified, Joe, you'll be notified.
We have one of our county legislators here tonight. Mr. Perkins? How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
And it's always a privilege to be in front of all you councilmen and you supervisor. And the last time I was here, I remember, I don't think I was a council or a
Yeah, I think you were talking about, I think you were talking about a jail.
Yeah, and I wasn't a legislator for the town of Poughkeepsie, and I am now, so I have new cards. If you want an update, I can give them to you.
Good.
But before I get to what I came for, I just want to mention, try the cooperative extension. I was out there for a course a couple of years ago, and what they talked about was the potential, if you've had floods and you have a FEMA record, there's grant money available to buy those homes out from under those people, return them to swamps so that they can actually be the place where water collects.
Yeah, we already went through this,
Oh, did you? Okay.
and there's no FEMA history.
Oh,
Yeah, this isn't a,
And what we're exploring now as a possible solution
okay.
would be a non-source point grant, straight-out grant. There are some grants that have to do with environmentally correct or green solutions to this kind of problem, and the state is very happy to fund those.
Okay.
I don't know whether what's been proposed would come under those criteria.
Okay. And as far as the demolition, you might want to just ask the property owner to put up a bond that will be returned to them at the end of the demolition.
yeah, I'm sure that would take place.
Okay, yeah. And from my view, I'm hoping that the old railroad beds are utilized to connect to the county and the railroad bridge. Because they go right to the border of Hyde Park.
Okay.
And from there, hopefully, somebody in Hyde Park could take over
Sure.
and do something.
Okay.
But what I came tonight to just enlighten you folks about is there are 3 resolutions that went through committee tonight, and all various committees. And those resolutions are aimed at 503 Haight Avenue. That's where the county has their IT superstructure, so all the information systems go out from there and the network out from there. And the county is looking at purchasing the building. And just thought you guys should know, that will be a little bit of loss of tax revenue for you guys. They present a very good argument on the county side as far as it being a cost saver. And so that they're anticipating that it's going to actually reduce the cost, even with the current bonding structure that they set up on an annual basis. So I'm pretty sure it's going to go through. On a personal note, since I've been in the legislature, I've watched them demolish the Nelson House, and we passed, I didn't vote for it, but we passed to demolish some buildings out in Millbrook. And part of their view of this project is that they're going to use some of the current workers and workforce to take care of the building. And I kind of look at it as, wait a second, we're tearing things down that we didn't take care of, but we're going to pull some of that workforce out to take care of another building. And so personally, I'm not happy with it. I'm not necessarily as opposed as I was to moving the jail, but this is one of those things where I think it could be beneficial for the county and detrimental to you guys.
And I appreciate that information. I became aware of it a few weeks back. Our assessor actually came across it somewhere. And this building, if you know where on Main Street, it's between Main and the arterial. And if you know where Catskill Office Supply is, and there's I think an AutoZone, it's a brick building kind of behind that. It's assessed at $1.4 million on our tax, our assessment rolls. And Rich is right, it may be a cost savings for the county, but the impact that cost savings will be spread over the entire county. The impact to the town of Poughkeepsie and the Arlington Fire District losing,
School district.
as you zero it down into smaller areas, it becomes a more significant impact for those taxpayers. So we certainly aren't in favor of more tax-free parcels in Arlington or in the town. So we appreciate the information, and I don't know if, as you stated, it's probably pretty much a done deal, but.
Yeah, and there's the issue is that they're fearful that somebody will buy it and raise their rent. And right now, I asked them how many buildings have been sold in the last year, and I don't think there's been any.
Yeah. How big is the building?
13,000 square feet.
So that's that little county building that's,
Yes.
but you don't own it.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So, I tried to look on the internet today, and the commercial properties don't seem to be listed the same way as what I'm used to seeing properties. So I wasn't able to really get an answer for myself either, but.
No other county building they can move that into?
Well, they want to sell High Street, and that's full, and they want to buy this one, and they want to tear down some out in Millbrook. There's a problem with moving IT equipment. In other words, it's pretty costly, and so they're looking at it for the best way for the county. But I just thought you guys
When
should.
is the official vote going to take
Tuesday.
place? So if the town board directs me, we can write a letter on behalf of the town to the legislature, voicing our,
I agree, Sean.
just voicing our
The cost would be to
concern and.
There's other ways not to do this so quickly. In other words, put it into the budget. We're going to be working on the budget. It's going to be coming up, and make it something that we do next year. I think.
Rich, I agree with you. Things aren't selling that quick. We've had a meeting with Todd a couple weeks ago with a couple of commercial developers. They're not taking off. And the other thing is, and we have people come every night about open door policy. Todd should have been informed of this, I would think, months ago. And I want to thank you for coming, because you're not our only county legislator, but you're the one that's here tonight telling us and informing us, which is nice, because, $1 million is a big chunk. We got tax certs, which are finally slowing down. This just takes a different chunk out in a different area. We lost sales tax dollars, as you know, and nobody's really helping. We're at the bottom of the barrel. All they do is keep chipping away at the bottom of the barrel, and sooner or later, there's not going to be anything left. $1 million is $1 million. It's a big chunk of, real estate for us to lose, and I'd like them to look at a different avenue. I think that in their cost savings, it's probably beneficial to them and beneficial to maybe Hyde Park, Millbrook, Unionville, and everybody else, but it's not beneficial to the town.
Right. And anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for being here. Mr. Casement, you're the only one left. Anything you want to say to the board? Come on up. Oh, you good? All right. All right, and let's just run through committee reports quickly. Finance, Councilman Krakauer is not here, but
Not here? Well, we started to go over the budget. If anybody on the board or anybody in the public has any input, the budget should by now be online and available. Feel free to give any of us a call, and let's go. We'll meet with department heads over the next week or so to discuss it further.
Okay.
Jay and I have had a couple of conversations back and forth about some ideas that we've had, so.
Good. Fire advisory,
I have nothing on that.
government ops,
Nothing to report.
land use and planning,
Nothing to report.
personnel,
Nothing to report.
recreation.
Next Tuesday will be a one-year anniversary for the senior center.
Right.
And 11 o'clock was the time?
Yes,
11 o'clock.
The cake is at, I don't think,
I think it's around 11, is it? I think it's at 11.
they're having a cake.
Well, we should get Mark to put it on the website.
I think it's at 1.
We'll
We'll let everyone know, or call the rec department. We're having a cake to celebrate the 1-year anniversary at the senior
Or
center.
maybe it is.
Tuesday, the
It is
14th,
1 o'clock.
1 PM
1 o'clock?
1 o'clock, yeah.
Tuesday the 14th at 1 o'clock.
at the senior center.
And Nassau, up there, the new Tilcon field is just about finished. And they're changing the post and rail, putting some post and rail fencing in some of the other parks.
Looks great. Have you seen
They
it?
look very nice.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Jay. Seniors, I think you just covered that. And technology and equipment
Nothing.
Nothing to report.
and infrastructure.
You got some of the report.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Make a motion to adjourn.
Just one thing.
Second.
Hold on.
Just one thing. I feel, like I say, you put a lot of effort into that, and I know it's hard to be up here, put that much effort in, and not be able to really give somebody 100% of an answer that you could actually help them. But I wanted to thank you because you did a
I
good
think the
job.
part that everybody, we know, but most of the people in the town don't know, there are drainage problems all over the town. I'm sorry that 50 or 60 years ago, when this was done, the town fathers then didn't have the foresight to have the requirements that we have now. You couldn't do a Hillis Terrace now the way it was done back then.
So I bought my house in 2000. I had to put a B-dry system in. I found out I flooded.
So there's no way, and as far as I know, it's not the town's problem at this point, because there's because my basement gets wet. At this point in time, is not the town. I don't know about the part about the water coming down the street, going into his property. I think that might have kind of.
I mean, and that's.
Well, as far as fixing the berms, that
Yeah,
should be
berms
correct.
could be done pretty easily, the tar.
But I feel terrible for these people. But we can't just simply decide, okay, let's put,
$1 million.
$1 million in and fix this problem next year. We can't do that.
Right.
There have been projects we've done through, and I think that would be the conduit that we would use if those members of the public want that done. If they don't, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
Now, you may find if you do have this meeting that there may be,
More
you have
than,
an engineer show up or something different that may come up with a totally different idea that he's done somewhere else, it may work.
We've looked at this, this is the most, put on paper solution. Engineering has looked at this particular site a number of times. It's a very difficult problem. It's a 50-year-old problem. He literally is at the bottom of the bowl, and there's no easy solution. I think Mr. Armstrong's probably right. Years ago, or whoever said it years ago, maybe it was Rich, it probably was a swamp there, and someone built a house there. All right. Anything else? Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Town Board adjourns at 8:42 PM.